Finding Atlantis. This is a page I tweeted about it from my uh, Atlantis Exists Indirect Evidence ebook. So as I was looking for, this is part of the chapter of the location of Atlantis. So it's like, okay, let me add that detail, because it's not like I'm trying to find Atlantis. Ironically, in the book anyway, it's not about finding Atlantis. It's about showing indirect evidence that an advanced ancient civilization did exist. And if it just so happens to be Atlantis, then okay. Because personally, I don't think that there was a place called Atlantis. Like, there probably was not a place called Atlantis. But if it was, great, right? But there was no place called Atlantis. It probably had a different name, right? That's the thing. We don't really know the real name, right? But the thing that I care about the most was the aspect of advance. It's like, did humans in the past get to a certain point that they were able to do some really cool shit? They were able to do, chemistry, astrology, right? They were able to make boats and planes, and they were able to do a whole bunch of different things because they had a lot of smart people that were able to figure things out. They had a lot of people that had the free time to experiment, right? To figure out, how to cut stone and build megalithic structures, and the list goes on. So it's like, humans at some point are going to get bored and do stuff. Something that I know from my own experience in life and seeing other people in this world do things. It's like a lot of innovations, a lot of our technology largely came from lazy people. It didn't come from hardworking people. If anything, it's the opposite, because hardworking people tend to do things the hard way. Technology makes things easier, so it doesn't make sense that a person who does things the hard way would invent something that makes things easier, because they're used to it being doing things the hard way. They'll just keep doing it the way they know, which is doing things the hard way, right? Like, for example, hunter and gathering. You go out, right, and go find food, right? Find things to eat, berries and vegetables and stuff like that, and find animals and hunt them and cook them and all that stuff. Right? You have to go through all that. A lazy person doesn't want to travel and do all that, right? So a lazy person will be like, why can't we just use this area right here and just put all the plants here? So that way all I have to do is just walk outside of my hut, and right there's all the food. I can gather here next to my hut. I don't want to walk all the way around in the forest looking for food when I can have the food here, right? Why go out there hunting, trying to find the animals and they're running, trying to hide from us in the forest, when we could just, gather them up and then bring them over here and put them in one place, make a little cage area and put them there and have them there and have them live there, right next to my hut, right? So that way I have access to food right next to where I live, instead of traveling to try to get it, right? And make a little pond, a little area where, again, next to where I live, right, to my hut, where, I can fish. And it'll be easy for me to catch a fish because the water's not that deep. It's just deep enough that, I can have fish in there, but not too deep that, I gotta hold my breath and jump in to try to fish like I would have to do if I went into the ocean. The ocean's a big pool, right? So things like that. Like, a lazy person would be the one to come up with these ideas of making things easier because they're lazy. They don't want to do it the hard way. They want to do it the easy way. And this, ironically, that's why if you ever see anybody that's reviewed as a genius, you will notice they tend to be lazy. They tend to be chill, laid back. They don't want to do much. But when it comes, if anything, they put more effort into being lazy, into trying to make things easier than they than doing it the hard way, right? So, anyway, just trying to point out the fact that it's like, advancements comes from trying to make things easier, and that's what technology is for. So, in the past, ancient humans trying to make things easier, trying to make it easier to live and to survive, makes sense. For example, ancient humans, hunter and gatherers, they would have to travel, especially to avoid the winter, because it's hard to survive in the winter unless you have some method, right? A structure, giant stone structures that can keep you warm in the winter, right? You have to travel because wooden huts and stuff like that won't be enough during winter. So you need to travel to hotter places. But people get old. We don't stay young forever. We don't stay strong forever. We get weak and old, and then we run into risks of danger of animals and stuff like that. So, not a great idea for older humans to keep traveling just to survive. They're not gonna make it, right? Only the strong will survive, right? Only the young will survive, right? But the young doesn't have the wisdom and experience. The older generation has the wisdom and experience. So if they die, knowledge dies, especially if you're not writing it down or anything. So you don't have tablets, stone tablets to put the knowledge down to make sure that when the old people die, well, at least we still have the knowledge that they gained from, from their youth and from living, and we can pass that knowledge on, right? And this goes on. This is part of why at some point humans have to create an advanced civilization, or a civilization which will always at some point be very advanced because the advancement comes from knowledge, right? The understanding of how the body works, understanding how to make things easier, right? The lazy people concept, like, oh, I don't want to do things the hard way, let me find an easy way to do it. And the list goes on. So, of course, ancient civilizations became advanced at some point. Just like all good things come to an end, right? All societies collapse at some point. And unfortunately, it's because young people ruin it. They start complaining about the old society, old people, they're making my life hard, blah, 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 blah. So then instead of trying to replace the society, right? To replace the old people with the young people running things. They instead rather tear down the civilization, right? The system, not realizing all you're doing is resetting, because now you have to create a new civilization, right? A new system to replace the old one that y'all let be destroyed when y'all could have just took over. You could have took over the old, the system and ran it better. If you think you have better ideas, then go become president and do better. Don't let Donald Trump be president. Don't let an old guy be president. Why don't you be president? And that's further proof that, unfortunately, civilizations die because of the young, not because of the old. But anyway, that's for a different conversation. The main point here is, as you can see from this page, like I was saying in the beginning, I'm not trying to find Atlantis. If I do, great, and maybe I did, based off of these images. But it is not the goal. But currently, this is part of the book that I'm at. Is like, oh, let me take the Plato's account of where is Atlantis supposed to be located and whatnot, and use Google Earth and maybe some images. And then there was this image here of supposedly of a map of Atlantis, of the shape of the island in which Atlantis would have been on, right, from this beyond the Straits of Gibraltar, blah blah blah, towards the west. And it's like, so basically between Africa, Europe, and America. So the map, the image is upside down, as is upside down. So that's why you see Africa on your left side instead of right side. Let me zoom in for you. So here's what the map looks like. So Africa to the left, right, and then America to the right. So since the Google map had it the other way, where America was to the left and Africa was to the right, obviously I had to flip the image upside down in order to make it match the map. So that way it's orientated to the way the map is. But as you can see, the shape is kind of like an arrowhead. And you see this anomaly, you want to call it. You see something that also kind of looks like an arrowhead. So it just seems interesting. There's something there underwater. And then you see this here, this shape, that shape. Seems interesting. And then this is how it appears on Google Maps, right? Or this image that I got from Google. Then right there in the middle, let me zoom in even further. That's as far as I can go. Circular pattern. There's a circular pattern right here, and then up here. So it kind of looks like an eyeball right here. Is that the top is an eyebrow? So let me use the image next to it. So this is when I colored it in, so you can kind of see, this top part, which I'll be like it's the eyebrow, and then the circular pattern of, rocks or whatever in a circle. So it's just, and then I put like 3 different color circles just to indicate the idea, like, 3 concentric circles and then a mountain range, right? Which is the brown part. So it's like, based off of Plato's description, it's essentially that. So this kind of looks like what he was describing. So it just seems interesting. The fact that there is something there. So there's a map. It's supposed to be like an old map. I don't know if it's real or not, like if it's an authentic map or not. But it's supposed to be, it's an image of an old map apparently showing Atlantis. And then you see here on a modern day Google map image that there is something on the water. Another thing you might notice, I'll zoom this one. This one shows it clearly. You see this line, like this tear, like this crack, this long crack on the ground. And that's called the Mediterranean, what is it? The Mid-Atlantic Ridge. That's what's called, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So that's what that's called. Which is very interesting for it to be there and for it to go right through the anomaly, right? Go right through the anomaly. And to me, that seems, the fact that it looks like a long crack, it's like the earth shook and cracked. So if that was Atlantis, well, definitely an earthquake, and the possibility of it sinking underwater is very possible, since it does look like it was somewhere where it would have shaken and fell down in the water. Now, my current little thought in this process here, when I was looking at this, I was like, what if Atlantis didn't really sink per se, and this anomaly here, right, it's just like the base of the island, right? Because you see the image over here in the drawing, so the map drawing, makes it look like a big continent basically, and then here just seems like leftover pieces. So it could be what happened was, yes, it shook, the island shook and came loose, right? So because the island's essentially like the top of a mountain or top of a pillar or top of a peak of Earth, right? Earth. So so it's possible that it shook it loose from this, this base here, and essentially it's more like the island floated away. Now it might sank down a little bit on the water first, but then at some point maybe it just started floating back up, or it stayed on the water. Whatever. The point is, I'm like, maybe it shook and moved, and because of that, because it's moving, it will move somewhere else. Where? Which direction? Whether it goes south or north, right? So then obviously I'm looking into that, and I noticed there's a basically an island, a big island. Sorry. I don't have the image here. Obviously, that'll be in the book because I'm still researching. But it basically, give me a second. Iceland. So I was like, Iceland kind of looks like it has the shape of this, what you see here in this map. So Iceland kind of looks like this. I'm like, hmm, if my little theory right now is that Atlantis did get, shooken up to the point where it got loose and started traveling. Maybe they go on the water at first, but then at some point it came back up, started floating, and it moved. It maybe moved and hit something else, maybe another peak or something. Like it just, they did it like it moved, right? So it's no longer in the original location that it was, and it moved. And what if it moved and it's currently where Iceland is? What if Iceland was this Atlantic, um, island? Right? What if Iceland was Atlantis? Well, one way to prove that it was, right? I wish I had the image here so you can see what Iceland looks like. But you can Google Iceland and try to compare it to this image, and you see some similarities. It ain't perfect, but it's just an idea because over time erosion, so the shape would change, would change a lot, especially from being shooken up, and so it wouldn't look exactly how it looks in this map. This is before, if the catastrophe, right? So Iceland might be what it looks like after the catastrophe. So it'd be interesting if it was. I'm just saying, it's something to think about. Y'all can go Google it and have a little bit of fun with the possibility that it is. And if it is, well, one way to find out, right, will be to excavate, right, to try to find any evidence of Atlantis in Iceland. Two things you'll want to consider would be try to find evidence of the ruins of the center, three concentric circles, right? The center of Atlantis, right? Try to find the three concentric circles, underground, obviously in the center of the Iceland, and then maybe even some stuff outwards, right? Some close to the edge of the continent, right? The edge of Iceland. Try to see if you can find, any evidence of like ancient, boats, that we can be like, here's evidence that Atlantis had boats, and that's why they're able to travel and blah 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 and all this extra good stuff, stuff like that. So definitely something to look into. So maybe I found Atlantis, or at least this opens up a theory that, oh yes, here's where Atlantis was supposed to be. There's some evidence that it was, and evidence that an earthquake happened. The earth shook and cracked on the seafloor, which loosened up Atlantis, right? The island of Atlantis, and then Atlantis just floated away somewhere, right? Whether it floated away somewhere underwater, and it is on the water somewhere, just not where it was supposed to be or where it used to be. It's on the water somewhere else, or that it went further north and became Iceland, or it went south and maybe went around Africa and then became Australia, because even Australia kind of looks like this. What if Australia turns out to be Atlantis? Anything's possible, right? Just a couple of little hypothetical theories there, but at least it's something to work with, right? It's a start. That's why I wanted to record this and make it like, oh, let's add this into the Finding Atlantis series, because the possibilities. So just throw this out as a theory that Atlantis, might have moved, and it might be Iceland. Might be. That's just my theory.